The holidays are here. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving week. Christmas is right around the corner. And we tend to think a lot about social media when we're with our families. We're scrolling through while we're there around, whether it be the dinner table or the Christmas tree. And sometimes that could be a little detrimental to our mental health, which is why on this episode of Safe Space, I wanted to talk to Dr. Paula Durlofsky here, who specializes in this area, especially when it comes to social media and our mental health. Dr. Durlofsky, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really excited to chat with you. And I think this is a really important topic to dive into here as we approach the holidays.
Yes, thank you for having me too. You are exactly right that the holidays are usually a time where people pick up their social media use. They're posting pictures of their family, they're posting their preparations, and time with friends. So something that could be really useful for someone that's not in a particularly great space is to plan ahead. And that is to put a plan in place, in fact, right now, as to what your triggers are. And, something about triggers and triggers around the holidays that can make our depression, our anxiety, or whatever we are dealing with worse is we're not often aware of what our trigger is, because obviously if we were, we would usually do something about it.
Just to give our viewers a little bit of background on you so they're familiar with your work, you are the author of Logged In and Stressed Out, How Social Media is Affecting Your Mental Health and What You Can Do About It. You also have a PhD in psychology from Temple University. You are a licensed clinical psychologist. You have your own private practice out in Pennsylvania. You have done so much work, 15 years in this space of social media and mental health. So you mentioned triggers. How can we be a little bit more aware of what those triggers are, and how you mentioned doing a plan and kind of planning ahead in terms of social media use? How can we be better at realizing what those triggers are and working through them?
That's a really good point, because the planning ahead would involve, triggers that are in our awareness. But what I'm talking about, and something you're talking about too, is not being fully aware of what our particular triggers are. But with that being said, something you just said about around the holidays, if you find that you are in a particular place where you're more vulnerable to when you log on to social media, that you notice, keep in mind to really tune in to how you're feeling when you're logged on. And I also want to say how you're feeling before you log on, how you feel while you're consuming social media platforms, and how you feel after. Because, it's important, especially around the holidays, to have a better and deeper understanding of why are you logging on at that particular time? Is it because you're feeling lonely and think that this distraction, which I want to say that a lot of people misunderstand social media as sometimes saying, hey, it's a way to fill time. It's a way for me to distract myself. But if it's triggering you, that's not a great tool. That's not what you want to go to.
It's not helping you. And in times it can be extremely hurtful to your own, whether it be insecurities or self-doubt or negative self-talk that can pop up. Go ahead.
So something that you mentioned too is the actual reality that social media is a platform where people showcase things, usually
positive things too, is what they're showcasing.
Right. And they're little snapshots, but it's important to keep in mind that that's not a full life, that life involves ups and downs for everyone. and that the perspective, or to gain a realistic perspective around, well, what is social media really about? And for most people, it's a virtual place to share and showcase usually like their best moments or best
Yes,
times.
of course. And
And
the
that's
holidays and the holidays can be a time where people are showing off maybe the gifts that they received, or, again, pictures of the family, the large family that they have, that some people may not have some of the similar things. In terms of negative self-talk, because I think that's a really important space when you're talking about social media, because when you're scrolling through, there's times you go, I don't have what she has, or man, I really wish I had a nice car like he got. When you're in that space, when you start to feel yourself sinking into that, what are some tips you can give to kind of try and pull yourself out of that negative self-talk? And I know you said reminding, this is just a snapshot. Everyone goes through ups and downs, but are there maybe some tips you can give that when we sense ourselves kind of going down that rabbit hole, to pull ourselves out of it?
Well, look, the first thing is, once you notice that that's the way you're feeling, I say, good for you. You are now aware of a trigger. And now you have a decision to make. And the decision, I think, would be to shut it down, log off of social media, and understand that, you may need a little bit of time to recover from what you were just exposed to. And that's okay. But figuring out and giving yourself the time and the space to step away from social media, to shut it down when you become aware of these feelings and negative self-talk, and then to figure out, what you can do at that moment to help yourself and to provide yourself with comfort, which
If,
is along the lines of self-care. Social
yeah,
media is not
boundaries, right? Boundaries too, to set up.
Yeah, honoring your personal boundaries. And that's
Yeah.
going to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
Finding a balance is going to be different for everyone. Now, look, across the board, I think I can safely say that for most people, being online constantly is not a good boundary ever. But I just want to say that no one's boundary or balance is going to be exactly the same as someone else's.
So I was reading a book recently by Mel Robbins. It's called The High Five Habit. And she talks in one of the chapters about turning jealousy into a positive. And she specifically brings up social media. And I want to get your thoughts on this, because I found this absolutely fascinating. If we're scrolling through social media and we're starting to find ourselves being jealous of what other people have, what Mel talks about is harnessing that jealousy, really peeling it apart, thinking and feeling, well, why am I jealous? And what are they doing that I want to be doing? And how do I take the steps to get there? And she talks about maybe reaching out to that person, and instead of being jealous, ask them how they've got to the steps that what they're doing. If someone is traveling a lot for work, if that's a desire you have, reaching out and saying, how do I go about that? What were the steps you took to do that? And taking that jealousy and kind of flipping it on its head and using it as a motivational tool to set yourself up for what you really want to do and what success you want to have. I want to get your thoughts on that, because I found that really interesting, of scrolling through, being jealous, but harnessing that, flipping it, and using it more as a motivational tool to realize what your true and real desires are and how you achieve it.
Envy is a normal human emotion and feeling. So it's really important to recognize that when we feel it, it's normal. And sometimes it can be healthy, actually, when we're able to be open to the feeling and to examine, okay, what is it that we are envious about? What is creating this feeling? And like you said, can it lead to me being able to achieve a similar goal? So having an openness to allowing yourself to feel envy, to acknowledge it, and to not get down on yourself, number one, which is, I think, what the author of the book you're talking about says, right? I think it's important to recognize when you're not open to your envious feelings, then envy can become destructive to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something to keep in mind. So when we're closed to it, or we become defensive, or we get angry at ourselves or the person that is living a life or doing something that we wish to do, we are holding ourselves back
Yeah.
when we do that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with what you say, to examine, what is it that this person is doing that, I want to do too. And
Yeah.
keep in mind, no two people are the same. So
Yeah.
whatever you do is still going to be different.
Yes,
And
exactly.
we're all,
Exactly. Around the holidays, let's say we just went through a breakup or a divorce, or, are in pain from a relationship ending. That can be triggering during the holidays. Maybe if you're trying to follow or see what your ex is doing, what would some of your advice be on kind of unplugging and coping with those loss and breakups during what is usually a come together time?
yeah. And social media makes breakups even harder because we can access it at any time. And when the urge bubbles up, which is normal, to see what is an ex doing, or just to reconnect, because we miss people that we love, even if the breakup was a good decision, or yours, that you were the one that had initiated it. So I think it's really important to plan ahead, and to when you are, and to recognize, look, you're going to have urges to go on social media, to check in with an ex, but to keep in mind, pause and think a little bit more. How do you think you'll feel after you see your ex? And how will this interfere or inhibit your healing? And I also want to say, look, if you do, cave in and you look on your ex's account, don't get so angry with yourself. Progress, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
Backsliding is okay, but you want to continue to work on not doing it. But
In
to
conclude, yeah. Well, yeah, and it's normal, right? It'll be normal to wonder, okay, what are they doing? Go take
absolutely.
a peek at their profile, and yeah, that did make me feel good. Okay, we'll sit with that for a second, and maybe that teaches you, well, maybe I need to take a time out from going to search for them and seeing what they're doing.
So,
Yeah.
right. And so, of course, that brings up, being able to say, look, I may need to block this person. I may
Or
need
mute mute notifications from things of that nature, right?
so that I can protect myself and put a boundary around, my social
Yeah.
media accessibility. That is self-care and self-love and self-protection.
And protecting your own mental health and spaces like that. Just to conclude here, and first of all, I can't thank you enough for sharing your insight and expertise on this, because I think it's so important, especially during these times, to when you're trying to be grateful and you're trying to come together, to not let social media kind of seep in. So just in conclusion, your final thoughts on, we talked a lot about virtual life and actual life, but just applying that, in a more sensible and practical way. How do you detach yourself from what is the online version of yourself, and trying to tap more into the actual, present moment of life, especially in a time when you're surrounded by family and the holidays?
Yeah. Well, I really try to be intentional around scheduling social media check-ins. So I know for me personally, it's not something I'm going to do in the morning, let's say, but maybe 15 minutes in the afternoon and 15 minutes in the early evening. And look, not everyone also, although we all use it in the same ways and for the same reasons, there's also a part where people use it in their for in their own way and and for their own individual reasons. So, if somebody is using social media in a way where they really stay in touch with where it is a means for them to stay in touch with people
or business, something they're doing for work, related to that as well. Yeah.
that, knowing why you are using it, knowing the benefits, that's a different approach than, and I to say this again, than to use it as a way to fill time, to relax. If I'm bored, that's not the best option, social media. So just being really mindful.